The massive space station hung in the darkness like a glowing jewel. It was bigger than Earth's moon and filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Ships of every shape and size docked at its many ports. Some looked like metal spears, others like floating crystals, and a few seemed to be made of living coral. Captain Jake Morrison walked through the station's wide halls. His human uniform looked plain next to the colorful outfits worn by aliens around him. Some creatures had 6 arms, others floated in the air, and many had skin that changed colors as they moved. Jake felt small and ordinary among them. The meeting hall was enormous. Thousands of seats faced a central platform where the most powerful beings in the galaxy would speak. Jake found his assigned spot in a small section marked for Earth's delegation. Only 5 humans had been invited to this gathering of the Galactic Defense Council. Admiral Kexthara stepped onto the platform. She was 12 feet tall with 4 arms and skin that looked like black metal. Her species, the Zephyrians, were known as the fiercest warriors in the galaxy. When she spoke, her voice boomed through the hall. "We gather today to discuss new membership applications," she announced. "Many species seek to join our alliance. But not all are worthy of our ranks." Jake watched as different alien representatives stood to present their cases. The Volthari delegate was a being made of living crystal that sparkled as it moved. Its voice sounded like wind chimes when it spoke about their advanced technology. The crowd murmured with approval. Next came the Narration ambassador, a creature that looked like a walking jellyfish. It spoke about their underwater cities and their ships that could travel through both space and deep ocean. Again, the audience seemed impressed. Then Admiral Kexthara called for Earth's representative. Jake stood up slowly. Every eye in the hall turned to look at him. He felt their stares like heat on his skin. "The humans request membership in our defense alliance," Jake said into his communicator. His words were translated into hundreds of alien languages. "Earth offers our full support and cooperation." The silence that followed was not comfortable. Then someone in the crowd made a noise that sounded like laughter. Soon, others joined in. The laughter grew louder and louder. Admiral Kexthara raised one of her 4 hands for quiet. "Tell us, human, what exactly do you offer? Your people are weak. Your bones break easily. Your muscles are pathetic compared to ours." The Volthari delegate's crystal body flashed bright colors. "Their technology is centuries behind ours. Their ships are slow and clumsy. What use could they possibly be?" More aliens began to speak up. A creature with tentacles instead of arms waved them dismissively. "Humans live such short lives. How can they gain wisdom in just a few decades?" Another alien, covered in thick fur, growled his opinion. "They have no natural weapons. No claws, no fangs, no poison. They are prey animals, not predators." Jake listened to every insult. His face stayed calm, but inside, anger was building. He had expected some resistance, but not this level of mockery. The Narration ambassador spoke again. "Perhaps the humans could serve as maintenance workers? Or food service? Surely they could clean our ships or prepare our meals." The laughter returned, even louder than before. Jake saw aliens pointing at him and making gestures he didn't understand but knew were not friendly. Admiral Kexthara seemed to enjoy the show. "The human military record is interesting. They fight among themselves constantly. Their wars are brutal but small. They have never faced a real threat from space." A new voice joined the conversation. This came from a being that looked like a walking tree with many eyes. "I have studied human biology. They require constant food, water, and air. They cannot survive in most environments without artificial support. They are the most dependent species I have ever observed." Jake finally spoke up. "We may have limitations, but we also have strengths. Human creativity and problem-solving abilities are dash." His words were cut off by more laughter. Admiral Kexthara shook her massive head. "Creativity? Problem-solving? These are not military assets. War requires strength, speed, and superior technology. Humans possess none of these. The tree-like alien continued its analysis. Human reaction time is slow. Their eyesight is poor. They cannot see in many light spectrums. Their hearing is limited. They are essentially blind and deaf compared to most species here. Another alien, this one floating in a sphere of water, added its voice. Their ships use primitive chemical rockets. Their weapons fire simple metal projectiles. They still use nuclear fission for power. It is like watching children play with toys. Jake felt his face growing hot with embarrassment and anger. But he forced himself to stay quiet. He was recording everything they said. Every insult, every dismissive comment, every moment of mockery. Admiral Kexthera looked around the hull. Does anyone here believe the humans deserve membership in our alliance? The silence was complete. Not a single voice spoke in support of Earth. Then we vote, the Admiral announced. All in favor of accepting human membership? No hands, claws, tentacles, or other appendages were raised. All opposed. The hull filled with a forest of raised limbs. Jake had never seen such a unanimous rejection. Admiral Kexthera's voice carried a tone of finality. The decision is made. Humanity's application is denied. We suggest your species focus on activities better suited to your abilities. Perhaps farming or mining. Leave warfare to those who are actually capable of it. The crowd began to disperse. Aliens walked past Jake without looking at him. Some made sounds that his translator couldn't interpret, but their meaning was clear enough. As Jake prepared to leave, Admiral Kexthera approached him. Up close, she was even more intimidating. Her 4 arms could probably crush him without effort. Human, she said, her voice slightly softer than before. Do not take this personally. We are not trying to be cruel. We are simply being realistic. Your species is not built for war. Accept this fact and find another path. Jake looked up at the massive alien. Thank you for your time, Admiral. Earth will consider your advice. As he walked back to his ship, Jake's mind was already working. The aliens thought humans were weak, slow, and stupid. They believed human technology was primitive and worthless. They saw humanity as nothing more than a minor nuisance in the galaxy. That was their mistake. Jake activated his communicator as he reached his shuttle. This is Captain Morrison calling Earth Command. Mission complete. I have recorded everything. Send word to Luna Base. Tell them it's time to begin Phase 2. The shuttle's engines hummed to life as Jake began his journey home. Behind him, the massive space station continued its slow rotation, filled with aliens who thought they knew everything about human capabilities. They would learn how wrong they were. 6 months had passed since the humiliating rejection at the Galactic Council. On the far side of Earth's moon, hidden in a crater that never saw sunlight, Luna Base buzzed with activity. This was no ordinary military facility. It was the most classified project in human history. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez walked through the underground corridors carved deep into the lunar rock. Her footsteps echoed off the metal walls as she made her way to the main hangar. She had been working 18-hour days for the past 3 years, and it showed in her tired eyes and gray hair. But today was different. Today, her work would finally be tested. The hangar doors slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, floating in a framework of support beams, was humanity's answer to galactic mockery. The UES Shadow's Edge looked nothing like the massive warships favored by other species. It was sleek and dark, about the size of a small building. Its hull seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Commander Alex Carter stood beneath the ship, studying a tablet filled with technical data. He was young for a ship commander, only 35, but his record was perfect. He had been chosen not for his aggression or boldness, but for his patience and careful thinking. She's beautiful, isn't she? Dr. Rodriguez said as she joined him. Alex looked up from his tablet. Beautiful and invisible. The question is, will she work? Dr. Rodriguez smiled for the first time in weeks. Oh, she'll work. The real question is whether the galaxy is ready for what humans can do when we put our minds to it. The Shadow's Edge represented 15 years of secret development. After humanity's first contact with aliens, Earth's scientists had realized they were far behind in raw technology. But instead of trying to match alien power, they had focused on human strengths. The result was a ship designed around concepts that other species had never considered. Lieutenant Amy Brooks climbed down from the ship's belly, where she had been checking the navigation systems. She was the best pilot in the Earth Defense Force, known for her ability to fly through asteroid fields that would destroy other ships. Her small size and quick reflexes made her perfect for the Shadow's Edge. "All systems check out, Commander," she reported. "The navigation computer is running perfectly. I've never seen readings this precise." The ship's stealth system was its greatest achievement. While alien ships used brute force shields that consumed enormous amounts of energy, the Shadow's Edge used adaptive camouflage. Thousands of tiny sensors read the surrounding environment and projected matching patterns on the hull. To any observer, the ship would appear to be empty space. Lieutenant Ben Hayes emerged from another hatch. He was the tactical officer, responsible for the ship's weapons and defensive systems. Unlike most military men, Ben was quiet and thoughtful. He preferred to study his enemies for weeks before engaging them. "The quantum dampening field is online," he reported. "We're generating almost no electromagnetic signature. Even our own sensors have trouble tracking us when it's active." The quantum dampening field was Dr. Rodriguez's greatest innovation. Most alien sensors looked for energy emissions, heat signatures, or gravitational disturbances. The field made the Shadow's Edge appear to have the same mass and energy as the empty space around it. Sergeant Carlos Martinez jogged up to the group. He was the chief engineer, a man who could fix anything with whatever materials were available. His job was to keep the ship running no matter what happened. In his hands, he carried a small device that looked like a metal cube. "The power systems are stable," he reported. "We're running at 12% of maximum output, and that's enough to power everything we need. The fusion reactor is so efficient, we could run for 6 months without refueling." This was another human innovation. Alien ships used massive reactors that produced enormous amounts of power. The Shadow's Edge used a small, efficient reactor that produced just enough energy for its needs. Less power meant less heat, less radiation, and less chance of detection. Commander Carter gathered his crew around him. The hangar was empty except for them and a few technicians making final preparations. Security was so tight that most people on Luna Base didn't even know the ship existed. "Listen carefully," he said. "What we're about to do has never been attempted before. We're going to prove that humans belong in this galaxy, but we're going to do it our way. Not with bigger guns or stronger shields, but with intelligence and patience." Dr. Rodriguez activated a holographic display that showed a map of local space. Red dots marked known alien territories, while blue dots showed human colonies. Between them was a vast area of empty space that most species avoided. "The aliens think we're weak because we're small and fragile," she explained. "They think we're stupid because our technology is different from theirs. They're measuring us by their standards, not ours." Lieutenant Brooks studied the star map. "So what's our mission, Commander?" Alex pointed to a region near the edge of known space. "We're going to watch and learn. For the next few months, we'll observe alien military operations. We'll study their tactics, their technology, and their weaknesses. And we'll do it without them ever knowing we're there." This was the true purpose of the Shadow's Edge. It wasn't designed to fight large battles or destroy enemy fleets. It was designed to gather information that no other ship could obtain. Human intelligence agencies had been doing this for centuries on Earth. Now they would do it among the stars. Lieutenant Hayes activated another display showing alien ship designs. Most of their vessels are built for direct confrontation. Big guns, heavy armor, powerful shields. They fight like medieval knights charging at each other. Sergeant Martinez nodded. "Their ships are also huge. Some of them are bigger than our space stations. They need massive crews and enormous amounts of resources." Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "Which makes them slow, predictable, and easy to track. The Shadow's edge can go places they never could. We can hide in asteroid fields, behind moons, inside gas clouds. We can watch them without being seen. Commander Carter looked at each of his crew members. These 40 people were humanity's best and brightest. They had trained for this mission for 2 years, learning every system on the ship and practicing maneuvers that other species would consider impossible. The aliens laughed at us, he said quietly. They called us weak and primitive. They said we should stick to farming and mining. Today, we begin to prove them wrong. The crew began their final preparations. Equipment was loaded, systems were tested one last time, and personal gear was stowed in the tiny crew quarters. The Shadow's edge was not built for comfort. Every cubic inch of space was used for essential systems. As they worked, Dr. Rodriguez pulled Commander Carter aside. Alex, I need you to understand something. This ship represents more than just human engineering. It represents a completely different way of thinking about warfare. She gestured toward the ship. Every alien species we've encountered fights the same way. They build bigger ships, more powerful weapons, stronger defenses. It's an arms race that's been going on for thousands of years. Commander Carter nodded. But humans never had the luxury of superior technology. We had to be smarter, not stronger. Exactly. On Earth, the most successful military forces weren't always the biggest or best equipped. They were the ones that could adapt, that could think creatively, that could turn their weaknesses into advantages. The loading process continued around them. In a few hours, the Shadow's edge would launch on its maiden voyage. It would slip away from Luna Base in complete silence, invisible to all sensors, beginning a mission that could change humanity's place in the galaxy. Lieutenant Brooks called out from the pilot station. Commander, we're ready for departure. All systems are green, stealth field is active, and course is plotted. Commander Carter took one last look around the hangar. This might be the last time he saw Earth or its moon for many months. The mission ahead was dangerous in ways that previous space missions had never been. They would be alone in hostile territory with no backup and no support. But they were ready. Years of preparation had led to this moment. The galaxy thought humans were weak and worthless. Soon, they would learn what human ingenuity could accomplish when properly applied. Take us out, Lieutenant, Commander Carter ordered. Silent running. Begin Operation Phantom. The Shadow's edge lifted off without a sound, its engines producing no visible flame or exhaust. Within minutes, it had disappeared into the darkness of space, beginning humanity's first true stealth mission among the stars. The message arrived on a Tuesday morning, transmitted across the galaxy on emergency frequencies used only for the most serious threats. Admiral Kexthera was reviewing routine patrol reports when her communication officer burst into her command center. Admiral, we're receiving a priority alert from the Outer Rim territories, the officer announced, his forearms trembling with excitement or fear. It's a distress call from the Calarian system. Admiral Kexthera activated the main display. The image that appeared made her blood run cold. The Calarian homeworld, once covered in beautiful crystal cities, was now dark. Smoke rose from burning ruins, and strange organic ships circled the planet like hungry predators. The voice that came through the speakers was barely recognizable as Calarian. Was Commander Veltar of the Calarian Defense Fleet. Our world has fallen. They came without warning. Ships unlike anything we have ever seen. They adapt to our weapons. Every shot we fired made them stronger. The transmission cut to static. Admiral Kexthera stared at the screen in disbelief. The Calarians were a proud warrior race with some of the most advanced military technology in the galaxy. Their ships could destroy asteroids with a single shot. How could they have been defeated so quickly? Within hours, more reports began arriving. The Rigel system reported strange biomechanical ships appearing at the edge of their space. The Vega colonies sent frantic messages about vessels that seemed to be alive, growing and changing as they watched. At the emergency session of the Galactic Defense Council, representatives from dozens of species gathered in the same hall where they had mocked humanity just months before. But now, fear had replaced arrogance. Admiral Kexthara stood before the assembly, her usual confidence shaken. We face a threat unlike any in recorded history. The enemy calls itself the Korthak Swarm. Their ships appear to be living organisms, capable of rapid adaptation and regeneration. The Volthari delegate, Zexmore, flickered with nervous energy. How is this possible? Our sensors show these ships have no traditional technology. No metal hulls, no energy cores, no conventional weapons systems. A new voice spoke from the gathered representatives. It belonged to Commander Thane, a survivor from the first Korthak attack. His species, the Archani, were known for their advanced medical knowledge and understanding of biological systems. I was there when they hit the Calarian fleet, he said, his voice hollow with exhaustion. Their ships, they learned from every attack we made. The first energy beam we fired seemed to hurt them. By the 10th shot, they were absorbing our energy and firing it back at us. The hull fell silent. Energy weapons were the backbone of galactic military might. Every major species relied on plasma cannons, laser arrays, and particle beams. If the enemy could adapt to energy weapons, how could they be fought? Commander Thane continued his report. Their ships appear to be grown rather than built. They have no crew that we can detect, but they coordinate like a single mind. When one ship learns something new, all the others seem to gain that knowledge instantly. Admiral Kexthara pulled up tactical displays showing the known Korthak fleet movements. The invasion was spreading faster than anyone had imagined. Red markers showed systems under attack, while yellow ones indicated worlds that had gone silent. The Korthak follow a pattern, she explained. They arrive in small numbers, probe our defenses, and learn from our responses. Then they return with larger fleets specifically adapted to counter our tactics. The Nereidan ambassador raised one of his tentacles. What do they want? Resources? Territory? Are they trying to communicate? Commander Thane shook his head. They don't seem interested in anything except elimination. Every world they take is stripped of all life. Plants, animals, intelligent beings, everything dies. They leave behind empty husks of planets. Panic began to spread through the assembly. Species that had been enemies for centuries started talking about cooperation. Military commanders who had never agreed on anything began sharing tactical data. The tree-like delegate from Verdania spoke with his many voices. Our conventional fleets are useless against them. The Rigel Defense Force lost 80% of their ships in the first engagement. The survivors report that nothing they tried worked for more than a few minutes. Admiral Kexthara called for order as debates broke out across the hull. We need new strategies. New weapons. New tactics. Everything we know about warfare must be reconsidered. The floating delegate from Aquatica asked the question everyone was thinking. How much time do we have? How fast are they spreading? Commander Thane activated a holographic map showing the invasion's progress. At their current rate, they'll reach the core systems within 6 months. The outer colonies have maybe 6 weeks before the main swarm arrives. For the first time in galactic history, the mighty military powers were facing an enemy they couldn't understand or defeat. The Zephyrian fleet, famous for their aggressive tactics and overwhelming firepower, had lost 3 entire battle groups in failed attempts to stop the swarm. The Volthari, whose crystal ships could phase through solid matter, found that their advanced technology was useless against enemies that didn't follow the normal rules of physics. The Korthak ships seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, making them impossible to hit consistently. Admiral Kexthara looked around the hall at the frightened faces of her fellow commanders. These were beings who had conquered star systems and defeated countless enemies. Now they sat in stunned silence, unable to comprehend how to fight ships that grew stronger with each battle. We need reinforcements, she announced. Every available ship, every weapon, every tactical advantage we can find. Contact all neutral systems. This threat concerns everyone. One junior officer, a young Zephyrian, raised his hand tentatively. Admiral, should we contact Earth? The suggestion was met with uncomfortable silence. Admiral Kexthara felt a flash of her old arrogance. What could the humans possibly do? Their technology is primitive. Their ships are slow. Their weapons are... She stopped, her words trailing off. The Voltheri delegate spoke quietly. Their weapons are kinetic. Metal projectiles fired by chemical explosives. Not energy-based. The implications of this statement slowly sank in. If the Korthak adapted to energy weapons, perhaps older, simpler weapons might still be effective. But the idea of asking humans for help was almost unthinkable. Commander Thane looked up from his tactical display. There's something else. The Korthak seemed confused by unconventional tactics. When the Kalarian civilians started fighting back with improvised weapons and guerrilla attacks, the bioships hesitated. It was as if they couldn't process strategies that didn't follow standard military doctrine. Admiral Kexthera felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature in the hull. Humans were known for their unconventional thinking and chaotic military history. They fought wars that made no sense to logical minds, using strategies that seemed random but somehow worked. But her pride wouldn't let her admit that humans might be useful. Not yet. Continue developing new countermeasures, she ordered. Increase patrols on all borders. And... She paused, the words difficult to say, prepare evacuation plans for core systems. As the meeting ended and delegates returned to their ships, a message was sent to every military command in the galaxy. The Korthak swarm was coming, and conventional forces couldn't stop them. On Earth, Captain Jake Morrison received the emergency broadcasts in his office. He watched the reports of Korthak attacks with growing interest. The alien military powers that had mocked humanity were now facing an enemy they couldn't understand or defeat. Jake opened a secure communication channel to Luna Base. Dr. Rodriguez, are you monitoring the Korthak situation? Yes, Captain. Very interesting. They've never encountered an enemy that fights the way humans do. How long until the Shadow's Edge reaches the combat zone? Commander Carter's ship is already in position. They've been watching Korthak movements for 3 weeks. Silent observation only, as ordered. Jake nodded. The galaxy's military powers were failing against an adaptive enemy. Soon, they would have no choice but to ask for help from the species they had dismissed as weak and worthless. Tell Commander Carter to continue his mission. And Dr. Rodriguez? Begin preparations for Phase 3. Yes, sir. Should I inform the rest of the fleet? Jake smiled grimly. Not yet. Let them suffer a little longer. Let them remember how they laughed at us. When they're desperate enough to beg for our help, then we'll show them what humans can really do. The UES Shadow's Edge drifted silently through the asteroid field at the edge of the Altair system. For 3 weeks, Commander Alex Carter and his crew had been ghosts in space, watching the largest Korthak fleet ever assembled prepare for their next assault. The bioships floated in loose formations that seemed random but showed a strange organic pattern. Lieutenant Amy Brooks kept her hands steady on the controls as she guided their ship between massive chunks of rock and ice. The asteroids provided perfect cover for their already invisible vessel. Even if the Korthak had sensors capable of detecting the Shadow's Edge, the natural interference from the asteroid field would mask their presence. Holding position behind asteroid designation Alpha 7, Amy whispered into her headset. Speaking loudly felt wrong when surrounded by enemies, even though their sound-dampening systems made the ship completely silent to outside observers. Commander Carter studied the main display showing hundreds of Korthak vessels. Up close, the bioships were even stranger than the reports had suggested. They pulsed with internal light, their hulls rippling like living skin. Some appeared to be growing new sections while he watched. Analysis update, Lieutenant Hayes, he requested quietly. Ben Hayes looked up from his tactical station, where streams of data flowed across multiple screens. I've identified 17 different ship types so far, Commander. But they keep changing. Ship designation Korthak Alpha 1 has grown 30% larger since we started observing it. The crew had learned to speak in whispers and move carefully during their weeks of observation. Dr. Rodriguez had designed the ship to be undetectable, but old habits from Earth's submarine warfare kept them cautious. Sergeant Carlos Martinez monitored the ship's systems from his engineering station. Power output holding steady at 8%. Heat signature is indistinguishable from background radiation. We're practically invisible. This was what the Shadow's Edge had been designed for. While alien warships charged into battle with guns blazing, the human vessel watched and learned. Every day brought new discoveries about how the Korthak operated. Commander Carter activated a private communication channel to Dr. Rodriguez back on Luna Base. The quantum communication system allowed instant contact across any distance without the risk of detection. "Rodriguez here," came the scientist's voice through his earpiece. Day 21 of observation, Carter reported. "We've discovered something important about their adaptation cycles." "Tell me." Carter pulled up a data file showing Korthak ship behavior over time. "They don't adapt constantly. The bioships go through rest periods where they process genetic changes. During these cycles, their defensive capabilities drop significantly." Dr. Rodriguez's excitement was clear even through the communication link. "How long do these cycles last?" "Approximately 4 hours every 36-hour period. And here's the interesting part, the entire fleet cycles together. When one ship rests, they all rest." This was crucial intelligence. The galactic military forces had been attacking Korthak fleets at random times, not knowing that sometimes their enemies were vulnerable and sometimes they weren't. Bad timing had cost them thousands of ships and millions of lives. Lieutenant Brooks adjusted their position slightly as a large asteroid drifted past. "Commander, I'm seeing movement in the main formation. Looks like they're preparing for something." Carter switched his attention back to the tactical display. The Korthak ships were indeed moving, but not in any pattern that made sense according to normal military doctrine. Instead of forming battle lines or defensive formations, they were clustering into what looked like organic groups. "They're getting ready to feed," Ben Hayes observed, studying the bioship movements. "I've seen this pattern before. They do it before attacking populated worlds." During their weeks of observation, the crew had learned that Korthak ships didn't just destroy planets, they consumed them. The bioships would descend on worlds like swarms of insects, stripping away all organic matter to fuel their own growth. Sergeant Martinez pulled up long-range sensor data. "Confirm multiple contacts moving toward the inner system. Target appears to be Altair Prime, population 12 billion. Commander Carter felt a chill run down his spine. 12 billion lives were about to be destroyed, and there was nothing his small ship could do to stop it. The Shadow's Edge was built for observation and stealth, not direct combat with hundreds of massive bioships. But that didn't mean they were helpless. "Hayes, start recording everything. I want detailed scans of their attack patterns, formation changes, and adaptation responses. If we can't save Altair Prime, we can at least learn from what happens." Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through the communication link. "Alex, you need to understand something. What you're observing there could change the course of this war. The galactic forces are fighting blind. They don't understand what they're facing." Carter nodded grimly. "We're seeing things no one else has seen. The Korthak aren't just adapting to weapons, they're adapting to entire tactical doctrines. Every conventional strategy the aliens try just makes them stronger." The bioships began moving toward Altair Prime in a pattern that looked chaotic but revealed hidden structure the longer Carter studied it. Some ships moved fast, others slow. Some took direct routes while others followed curved paths. It seemed random until he realized what he was seeing. "They're moving like a living organism," he said softly. "Not like a military fleet, but like white blood cells responding to an infection." This explained why conventional tactics failed against them. Military commanders across the galaxy were trained to fight other military forces with predictable behaviors and logical strategies. The Korthak followed biological imperatives that made no sense to structured military minds. Amy Brooks kept the Shadow's Edge positioned perfectly as the massive bioships passed nearby. Some of them were close enough that the crew could see details on their hulls, growths that looked like eyes, tendrils that moved independently, sections that pulsed with different colors. "Are those things alive?" she whispered. Ben Hayes studied the sensor readings. "Define alive." They show biological activity, but also mechanical functions. It's like someone crossed a spaceship with a giant animal. This was another piece of the puzzle. The galactic military was trying to fight technology with technology, but the Korthak weren't purely technological. They were something new, a fusion of biology and engineering that followed different rules. As the bioships moved away toward their target, Commander Carter made a decision that would change the course of the war. "Open a channel to Earth Command," he ordered. Sergeant Martinez looked surprised. "Sir, that will break communication silence. If anyone intercepts the signal." "Do it," Carter said firmly. "This information is too important to wait." The quantum communication system connected instantly to Captain Morrison's office on Earth. "This is Morrison." "Captain, this is Carter. I'm sending you complete tactical analysis of Korthak operations." "Sir, the galactic forces are fighting this war completely wrong." "Explain." Carter pulled up his accumulated data files. "They're treating the Korthak like a conventional military force. But these things don't follow military logic. They follow biological imperatives. They're not soldiers, they're a living ecosystem that happens to fight." Captain Morrison's voice sharpened with interest. "What are you recommending?" "Sir, everything the aliens know about warfare is useless here. But humans, we've fought unconventional enemies before. Guerrilla forces, terrorists, asymmetric threats. We know how to fight enemies that don't follow the rules." Dr. Rodriguez's voice joined the conversation. "Alex is right, Captain. The Korthak adapt to direct confrontation because that's how biological organisms work. They evolved to survive threats. But they've never faced the kind of indirect warfare that humans specialize in." Commander Carter watched as the Korthak fleet disappeared toward Altair Prime. In a few hours, 12 billion people would be dead, and another world would be stripped bare. The galactic military would respond with massive fleets and powerful weapons, and they would fail just like they had failed everywhere else. "Captain," he said quietly, "I think it's time to show the galaxy what humans can really do." Captain Morrison was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice carried the weight of a decision that would change history. "Maintain your position, Commander. Continue observing. And prepare for Phase 4. "What's Phase 4, sir?" "We're going to teach the galaxy how to fight a war they don't understand. And we're going to do it using methods they've never considered." The communication channel closed, leaving the crew of the Shadow's Edge alone in the darkness among the asteroids. Around them, space was quiet and peaceful. But Carter knew that peace was about to end. Humanity was about to enter the war, and they were going to fight it their way. Commander Alex Carter stood in the Shadow's Edge briefing room, looking at a holographic display that showed the Korthak fleet's current position. 3 days had passed since the bioships had destroyed Altair Prime. 12 billion people were dead, and the alien survivors spoke of horrors beyond imagination. But Carter wasn't thinking about direct revenge. He was thinking about something much more subtle and dangerous. "Gentlemen, ladies," he addressed his crew, "we're about to begin the strangest military operation in human history. We're going to fight an enemy without them ever knowing we exist." Lieutenant Ben Hayes studied the tactical display with interest. "How do we hurt them without revealing ourselves?" Carter smiled grimly. "We're going to use their greatest strength against them. They adapt to everything they encounter. So we're going to give them things to adapt to that don't actually exist." Dr. Rodriguez's face appeared on the communication screen from Luna Base. "Alex is referring to a psychological warfare technique humans perfected centuries ago. We're going to make the Korthak fight ghosts." The plan was unlike anything attempted in galactic warfare. Instead of attacking the bioships directly, they would plant false information into their sensory systems. The Korthak would detect threats that weren't real and waste time and energy adapting to imaginary weapons. Lieutenant Amy Brooks raised her hand. "How do we plant false sensor readings in their ships?" Sergeant Carlos Martinez pulled up technical schematics. "I've been studying their bioships for weeks. They use organic sensor networks that are incredibly sensitive but also easy to fool. Think of it like tricking a person's eyes with optical illusions. The first step was creating phantom ship signatures. Using modified sensor drones, the Shadow's Edge could project false images that would appear real to Korthak's sensory organs. The bioships would detect what seemed to be large fleets moving in attack formations. The beauty of this approach, Dr. Rodriguez explained, is that the Korthak will waste adaptation cycles preparing for battles that never come. Every false threat they prepare for is real energy and resources they can't use elsewhere. Carter activated a series of small devices that Martinez had been preparing. They looked like metal spheres the size of basketballs, but inside each one was sophisticated holographic projection equipment powered by miniaturized fusion cells. These are phantom generators, Carter explained. We'll deploy them throughout Korthak-controlled space. Each one can project the sensor signature of a full battle cruiser for up to 6 months. Ben Hayes grinned as he understood the implications. So they'll think they're facing massive fleets when really it's just empty space and fake signals. Exactly. But that's just the beginning. The second part of the plan was more complex. The Shadow's Edge would use its stealth capabilities to plant specialized nanomines near Korthak ships. These mines wouldn't explode or cause direct damage. Instead, they would emit carefully designed signals that interfered with bioship communication networks. The Korthak coordinate through biological signals, Dr. Rodriguez continued. If we can disrupt those signals during critical moments, we can cause coordination failures across their entire fleet. Martinez showed them microscopic devices that looked like tiny metal flowers. These nanomines attach to bioship hulls and remain dormant until activated. When triggered, they broadcast false coordination signals that make different parts of the Korthak fleet think they're receiving contradictory orders. Carter studied the tactical possibilities. Imagine if half a fleet received orders to attack while the other half received orders to retreat. Or if their sensor ships reported enemy positions that didn't match what their attack ships were seeing. The third element of the plan was the most dangerous. The Shadow's Edge would need to get close enough to major Korthak command ships to plant advanced interference devices directly on their hulls. These devices would introduce false memories into the bioship's genetic adaptation systems. This is where it gets really interesting, Dr. Rodriguez said with excitement. We can make them adapt to threats that not only don't exist, but are actually counterproductive. Imagine armor that protects against weapons we don't have but makes them vulnerable to weapons we do have. Amy Brooks looked concerned. How close do we need to get for this to work? Close enough to touch, Carter admitted. We'll need to make physical contact with their command ships during their rest cycles. The crew fell silent as they absorbed the implications. Getting that close to Korthak ships would be incredibly dangerous, even with their advanced stealth technology. One mistake, one moment of detection, and they would be destroyed instantly. Over the next week, the Shadow's Edge began its invisible war against the Korthak swarm. The first phantom generators were deployed in empty space near major shipping lanes. Within hours, Korthak scout ships detected what appeared to be massive human fleets moving through their territory. The bioships responded exactly as predicted. They began adapting their hulls and weapons to counter human kinetic weapons and nuclear missiles. Energy was diverted from other systems to develop defenses against threats that existed only in their sensor networks. Phase 1 is working perfectly, Ben Hayes reported. Long-range scans show the Korthak are redesigning their ship configurations. They're strengthening areas that would be vulnerable to projectile weapons while weakening their energy-based defenses. This was crucial because it meant the bioships were becoming more vulnerable to the energy weapons used by galactic forces. By adapting to fight humans, they were making themselves weaker against their current enemies. The nanomine deployment began during the second week. Using her incredible piloting skills, Amy Brooks maneuvered the Shadow's Edge to within meters of bioship hulls while they underwent their rest cycles. Martinez deployed the tiny devices with precision, placing them near what appeared to be sensory organs and communication nodes. Mines deployed successfully, Martinez reported after their fifth successful mission. All devices are active and ready for coordination. The real test came when a Korthak fleet attempted to attack the Rigel system. At the critical moment of their assault, Carter activated the nanomines remotely. Suddenly, bioships that had been moving in perfect coordination began receiving conflicting signals. Half the fleet turned left while the other half turned right. Attack ships moved forward while support vessels retreated. Some bioships began firing at empty space while others powered down their weapons entirely. The Rigel Defense Force, which had been preparing for certain destruction, found themselves facing an enemy fleet in complete chaos. For the first time since the war began, galactic forces achieved a decisive victory against the Korthak. Incredible, Dr. Rodriguez said as she analyzed the battle reports. The Rigel commanders are claiming they developed new tactics, but we know the truth. The Korthak defeated themselves. The most dangerous phase came during the third week. Carter personally led a team to plant advanced interference devices on 3 major Korthak command ships. Wearing specially designed stealth suits, they floated through space and attached the devices directly to bioship hulls. The interference devices were Dr. Rodriguez's masterpiece. They didn't just disrupt communications, they introduced false genetic memories into the bioship's adaptation systems. The ships would remember encountering weapons and tactics that had never actually been used against them. Memory implantation successful, Carter reported as they returned to the Shadow's Edge. The command ships now believe they've encountered advanced human plasma weapons, electromagnetic pulse bombs, and viral warfare agents. Within days, the effects became visible. Korthak ships began developing elaborate defenses against weapons that didn't exist. They grew thick electromagnetic shielding that slowed them down. They developed antiviral systems that consumed enormous amounts of energy. They reinforced their hulls against plasma weapons while making themselves vulnerable to conventional explosives. Most importantly, they began to fear humanity. Reports reached the Galactic Defense Council of strange Korthak behavior. Bioships were avoiding areas where human activity had been detected. Entire fleets were retreating from sectors where phantom generators created fake human signatures. Admiral Kexthera received intelligence reports that confused and amazed her. The Korthak appear to be adapting to fight human forces, her tactical officer reported. But according to our information, humans haven't engaged them directly. For the first time since the war began, the Korthak advance had been stopped. Not by superior firepower or advanced technology, but by an enemy that fought with their minds instead of their weapons. Carter looked at the latest intelligence reports with satisfaction. How are the galactic forces responding? They're confused but grateful, Dr. Rodriguez replied. Korthak fleets that seemed unstoppable are now suffering coordination failures and tactical confusion. The aliens are starting to win battles they should have lost. But Carter knew this was just the beginning. The real test would come when humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. The aliens would learn that their salvation had come from the species they had mocked and dismissed. Begin preparations for the final phase, he ordered. It's time to show the galaxy what human warfare really looks like. The final battle for the Centauri system began at dawn on the colony world of New Geneva. 12 billion human colonists watched from their cities as the largest Korthak armada ever assembled approached their system. Despite weeks of mysterious setbacks, the bioships still outnumbered the combined galactic defense forces by 3-1. Admiral Kexthera stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the massive enemy fleet approach. Her 4 arms moved rapidly across control interfaces as she coordinated the defense. Ships from a dozen different species had gathered to make their last stand here. Enemy fleet approaching the outer defense perimeter, her tactical officer reported. Counting over 800 bioships of various sizes. Some are larger than our dreadnoughts. Despite recent Korthak coordination problems, this was still the most powerful force the swarm had ever assembled. The aliens had learned from their recent failures and were taking no chances with this critical assault. The Volthari delegate Zexmore flickered with nervous energy on the communication screen. Admiral, our crystal ships are in position, but if the Korthak have adapted to our phasing technology, we fight with what we have, Admiral Kexthera replied grimly. All ships, prepare for engagement. This is where we make our stand. Light years away, the UES Shadow's Edge hung in empty space, invisible to all sensors. Commander Alex Carter watched the battle preparations through long-range scanners while his crew made final preparations. All systems ready, Commander, Sergeant Carlos Martinez reported. Stealth field is at maximum efficiency. We're completely undetectable. Lieutenant Amy Brooks flexed her fingers on the flight controls. Course plotted for the center of the Korthak formation. It's going to be a rough ride through all those bioships. Lieutenant Ben Hayes studied the tactical display showing both fleets. The galactic forces are brave, but they're still thinking conventionally. They're going to try to slug it out with an enemy that adapts to everything they do. Commander Carter opened a communication channel to Captain Morrison on Earth. Captain, we're ready to begin the final phase. Once we decloak, there's no going back. Understood, Commander. The entire galaxy is watching this battle. When you reveal yourself, you'll be showing them what humanity is truly capable of. Dr. Rodriguez's voice joined the conversation from Luna Base. Alex, remember what we discussed. You're not just fighting the Korthak today. You're changing humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Carter nodded to his crew. Take us in, Lieutenant Brooks. Silent approach until we reach the center of their formation. The Shadow's Edge began its approach to the battle zone. Amy Brooks piloted the ship through space with incredible skill, avoiding detection by both friendly and enemy forces. The ship's advanced stealth systems made it invisible to the massive bioships they passed. As they moved deeper into Korthak territory, the crew could see details of the alien vessels up close. The bioships pulsed with internal light, their hulls rippling like living skin. Some had grown new sections since their last observation, while others showed signs of recent adaptation. Look at that, Ben Hayes whispered, pointing to a massive command ship. It's grown what looks like armor plating specifically designed to deflect projectile weapons. They're still adapting to fight humans even though we haven't engaged them directly. This was the result of weeks of psychological warfare. The Korthak had convinced themselves that humanity posed a major threat and had spent enormous resources preparing for a conflict with human forces that hadn't actually happened yet. Meanwhile, the conventional battle was beginning. Galactic ships opened fire with energy weapons, sending brilliant beams of plasma and coherent light toward the bioships. For a few moments, the attack seemed effective. Several Korthak vessels showed damage from the initial assault. But then the adaptation began. The bioships that had been hurt started changing, their hulls growing new configurations designed to absorb and deflect energy weapons. Within minutes, the same attacks that had been effective were now useless. Galactic forces are falling back, Amy Brooks reported. The Korthak are adapting faster than ever. Admiral Kexthara's frustrated voice came over the general communication frequency. All ships, switch to backup weapon systems. Try to stay ahead of their adaptation cycles. But it was no use. The Korthak had fought dozens of battles against energy-based weapons. They adapted so quickly now that new weapon configurations were useless within minutes of first use. Commander Carter watched as galactic ships began taking heavy damage. The Volthory crystal ships, once thought invincible, were being torn apart by bioship weapons that had learned to disrupt their molecular structure. It's time, he said quietly. The Shadow's Edge was now in the exact center of the Korthak formation, surrounded by hundreds of massive bioships. If their stealth field failed for even a second, they would be destroyed instantly. All stations ready for decloak, Carter announced. On my mark, we reveal ourselves to the galaxy. He activated the ship's communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies used by both Galactic and Korthak forces. His next words would be heard across the entire battle zone. This is Commander Alex Carter of the United Earth ship Shadow's Edge. We are decloaking in the center of the enemy formation. All Allied ships, prepare to receive tactical coordination. Then he gave the order that changed everything. Brooks, kill the stealth field. Let them see us. The advanced camouflage system that had hidden them for months suddenly shut down. The Shadow's Edge appeared in the middle of the Korthak fleet like a ghost becoming solid. For a moment, both sides of the battle stopped firing in pure shock. Admiral Kexthara's voice crackled with disbelief over the communication channels. Impossible. That's a human ship. How did they penetrate the Korthak formation? How did they get past our sensors? The bioships around the Shadow's Edge began to react, turning toward this new threat that had appeared from nowhere. But Amy Brooks was already moving, executing maneuvers that seemed impossible for a ship of any size. The Shadow's Edge danced between massive bioships like a hummingbird among elephants. Its small size and incredible agility allowed it to move through spaces where larger ships would be destroyed. But more importantly, the ship's weapons were specifically designed to exploit the weaknesses that weeks of observation had revealed. Instead of energy weapons that the Korthak could adapt to, the Shadow's Edge used kinetic weapons firing specially designed projectiles. Targeting bioship neural nodes, Ben Hayes announced. Firing Sequence Alpha. The ship's weapons weren't designed for massive destruction. Instead, they targeted specific vulnerable points that the crew had identified during their long observation period. Each shot was precise, calculated to cause maximum disruption with minimum energy. The results were immediate and dramatic. Bioships that had been adapting successfully to energy weapons suddenly found themselves facing threats they weren't prepared for. The projectiles penetrated their hulls and disrupted internal systems that had never been attacked before. How are they doing this? Admiral Kexthera asked in amazement. Their weapons should be useless against adaptive bioarmor. Commander Carter opened a communication channel to the Galactic Forces. Admiral, this is Carter. We've been observing the Korthak for months. We know their weaknesses. Follow our targeting solutions and coordinate your attacks with ours. For the first time since the war began, someone was giving the Galactic Forces tactical information that actually worked. Carter's crew had identified the bioship's vulnerable periods, their communication nodes, and their adaptation cycles. All ships, Admiral Kexthera broadcast, coordinate with the human vessel. Follow their targeting data. The tide of battle began to turn. Galactic ships that had been retreating in confusion suddenly found themselves with effective tactical information. They began targeting bioship vulnerabilities at precisely the right moments, causing damage that the Korthak couldn't adapt to quickly enough. But the most shocking moment came when Commander Carter activated the nanomines and interference devices that had been secretly planted weeks earlier. Suddenly, Korthak ships throughout the formation began receiving false coordination signals. Bioships that had been moving in perfect formation suddenly turned on each other. Some began firing at allies while others shut down their weapons entirely. The hive mind that had made them so effective was now working against them. The Korthak are in chaos, Ben Hayes reported with excitement. Their coordination is completely breaking down. Admiral Kexthera stared at her tactical display in amazement. The massive enemy fleet that had seemed unstoppable minutes earlier was now destroying itself through friendly fire and coordination failures. How is this possible? She asked over the open channel. Commander Carter's voice was calm and confident. Admiral, you've been fighting this war with conventional tactics against an unconventional enemy. Humans have been preparing for this moment for months. We know how to fight enemies that adapt, because on Earth, we've been doing it for thousands of years. The revelation hit the Galactic Forces like a shock wave. The species they had mocked as weak and primitive had been secretly conducting the most sophisticated military operation in galactic history. This is impossible, the Voltheri delegate whispered. Human technology is primitive. Their ships are slow. How could they have done this? Dr. Rodriguez's voice joined the conversation from Luna Base. You measured us by your standards, not ours. You looked for big guns and heavy armor. You never considered that intelligence and patience might be more powerful than brute force. As the battle continued, it became clear that the Korthak advance had been stopped. Not by superior firepower, but by superior strategy. The bioships, confused and divided, began retreating from the system. Admiral Kexthera looked at her tactical display with new respect for the small human ship dancing through the battlefield. Commander Carter, how long have you been planning this? Since the day you rejected our application to join your alliance, Admiral. We knew we'd have to prove ourselves eventually. We just decided to do it on our own terms. The battle for Centauri was over, but the war for humanity's place in the galaxy had just begun. The battle for Centauri continued to rage, but now the momentum had completely shifted. Admiral Kexthera found herself in the strange position of taking tactical orders from a species she had dismissed as primitive just months earlier. Human vessel Shadow's Edge, this is Admiral Kexthera, she broadcast. My fleet is ready to coordinate with your operations. What are your recommendations? Commander Alex Carter studied the tactical display showing the chaotic Korthak formation. Bioships were still firing at each other due to the false coordination signals, but some were beginning to adapt to the interference. Time was critical. Admiral, the Korthak are starting to recover from the initial confusion. We need to strike now while their hive mind is still disrupted. Target their command ships first, they're the larger vessels with the most bioluminescent activity. Lieutenant Ben Hayes highlighted specific targets on the tactical display. Sending targeting data to all allied ships. Focus fire on neural command nodes during their coordination attempts. The galactic forces had never seen anything like this. Instead of the massive fleet engagements they were used to, the human ship was orchestrating a surgical strike that targeted enemy weaknesses most aliens didn't even know existed. The Volthari delegate Zexmore's crystal form flickered with confusion and amazement. How do you know where their neural nodes are located? Our best scientists have been studying bioship anatomy for months without success. Dr. Rodriguez's voice came through the communication link from Luna Base. We've been watching them for much longer than months. Humans have a saying, know your enemy. We took that advice seriously. What the galactic forces didn't fully understand was that human military doctrine had been shaped by thousands of years of fighting asymmetric conflicts. On Earth, humans had faced enemies with superior technology, larger numbers, and greater physical strength. They had learned to win through intelligence, patience, and unconventional tactics. Lieutenant Amy Brooks maneuvered the Shadow's Edge through the Korthak formation with impossible precision. The ship twisted and rolled between massive bioships, avoiding their weapons while staying close enough to exploit their blind spots. How is their pilot doing that? Admiral Kexthera asked in amazement. Those maneuvers should be impossible at combat speeds. Commander Carter smiled grimly. Human pilots train differently than yours, Admiral. We don't rely on computer assistance for complex maneuvers. Our pilots learn to think and react faster than any automation system. This was another advantage that aliens had failed to recognize. Most galactic species use sophisticated computer systems to handle combat maneuvers. Human pilots trained to fly manually, developing reflexes and spatial awareness that no computer could match. Sergeant Carlos Martinez monitored the ship's systems as they pushed the Shadow's Edge to its limits. Power output at 90% and climbing. Hull stress is within acceptable parameters. All weapons systems operational. The ship's design philosophy was becoming clear to the galactic observers. While alien vessels were built for maximum firepower and heavy armor, the Shadow's Edge was built for efficiency and precision. Every system was optimized for specific purposes rather than general superiority. Their ship is so small, the Nereidan ambassador observed. How can it carry enough weapons to be effective in fleet combat? Ben Hayes answered while continuing to coordinate precise strikes against bioship vulnerabilities. We don't need massive weapons if we know exactly where to hit. One precise shot can be more effective than 100 powerful ones that miss their targets. This concept was foreign to most galactic military thinking. Alien forces had been fighting wars based on technological superiority for so long that they had forgotten the art of tactical precision. The Shadow's Edge's next demonstration shocked the Allied fleet even more. As a group of Korthak bioships began to coordinate a counterattack, Commander Carter activated another set of hidden devices. Suddenly, the attacking bioships began behaving erratically. Some stopped in the middle of their attack runs, while others turned away from their targets. A few began exhibiting behaviors that looked almost like fear. What just happened? Admiral Kexthera demanded. Why did they retreat? Dr. Rodriguez explained from Luna Base. We introduced false memories into their adaptation systems weeks ago. Those bioships now believe they've encountered human weapons that are far more dangerous than anything we actually have. The psychological warfare aspect was the most alien concept of all to the galactic forces. They fought with honor, using straightforward tactics and honest communications. The idea of making an enemy afraid through deception was completely outside their experience. You made them fear humans? The tree-like delegate from Verdania asked with his multiple voices. How is such a thing possible? Commander Carter coordinated another series of precision strikes while explaining. Fear is a powerful weapon, but it only works if your enemy has imagination. The Korthak hive mind is biological, so it can be influenced by biological responses like fear and confusion. As the battle progressed, the full scope of human preparation became clear. Every aspect of their strategy had been planned months in advance. The phantom generators, the nanomines, the interference devices, even the timing of their revelation, everything had been calculated for maximum psychological and tactical impact. Lieutenant Brooks executed a particularly daring maneuver, diving the shadow's edge through a gap between two massive bioships and emerging behind their formation. Commander, I'm seeing something interesting. The Korthak aren't just retreating, they're genuinely afraid of us. This was the moment when human psychology proved superior to alien logic. The galactic species fought with calculation and reason. Humans understood emotion, motivation, and the power of fear as a tactical weapon. Admiral Kexthera watched her tactical display with growing amazement. The bioships are actively avoiding areas where your ship has been. They're treating you as a greater threat than our entire combined fleet. That's because we represent something they've never encountered before, Carter explained. They can adapt to energy weapons, kinetic weapons, even exotic particle beams. But they can't adapt to an enemy that fights with psychology and deception. The Korthak command ships began broadcasting what sounded like retreat orders. For the first time since the war began, a major bioship formation was withdrawing from a battle they could have won. Incredible, the Volthari delegates said. They outnumber us 3-1 and they're retreating. How did you accomplish this? Dr. Rodriguez provided the answer that would change galactic military thinking forever. We studied human history. Every time humans faced a superior enemy, we won by changing the rules of engagement. We never fought the war our enemies expected us to fight. Ben Hayes highlighted the retreating bioships on the tactical display. The beauty of psychological warfare is that it becomes more effective over time. Every retreat makes them more afraid. Every successful deception makes them more uncertain. Commander Carter opened a general communication channel to address all Allied forces. This is what humans call asymmetric warfare. When you can't match your enemy's strengths, you exploit their weaknesses. When you can't win by their rules, you change the game. Admiral Kexthera listened to this explanation with the dawning realization that her entire understanding of warfare had been limited. Commander Carter, how long would it take to teach these tactics to our forces? Years, Admiral. Human military doctrine isn't just about techniques, it's about thinking differently. We train our officers to be creative, to take initiative, to break rules when necessary. This was perhaps the most shocking revelation of all. Galactic military forces were highly disciplined and followed strict protocols. The idea of encouraging officers to be creative and break rules was revolutionary. As the last Korthak bioships retreated from the Centauri system, Admiral Kexthera found herself looking at warfare from a completely new perspective. The humans hadn't won through superior technology or greater numbers. They had won by understanding something that all the advanced alien civilizations had forgotten. Commander Carter, she said formally, on behalf of the Galactic Defense Council, I request immediate admission of humanity to our alliance. Not as junior members, but as tactical advisors. The response came not from Carter, but from Captain Morrison on Earth. Admiral, we appreciate the offer. But humanity's terms have changed since our last meeting. What do you mean? We're no longer asking to join your alliance, Admiral. We're offering to teach you how to win wars you thought were impossible to win. The question is, are you ready to learn? 3 months after the Battle of Centauri, the same great hall that had once echoed with laughter at humanity's expense was now silent with respectful attention. Admiral Kexthera stood before the assembled delegates, but this time she was not the one giving orders. Captain Jake Morrison walked to the central platform with quiet confidence. The same aliens who had mocked him months earlier now watched his every movement with careful interest. The Volthari delegate Zexmore flickered with nervous energy, while the Nereidan ambassador had positioned himself closer to hear every word. Honored delegates, Captain Morrison began, his voice carrying clearly through the hall's translation systems. 6 months ago, you rejected humanity's application to join your alliance. You said we were too weak, too primitive, too dependent to contribute to galactic defense. The hall remained completely silent. No one laughed this time. Today, I stand before you not as a supplicant asking for membership, but as a representative of the species that saved your civilizations from the Korthak swarm. Admiral Kexthara stepped forward. Her forearms moved in what humans had learned was a gesture of deep respect among her people. Captain Morrison, the Galactic Defense Council formally requests not only immediate admission of humanity to our alliance, but asks that human military advisors be assigned to all major operations. Morrison nodded politely. We appreciate the offer, Admiral. But as I mentioned after Centauri, our terms have changed. He activated a holographic display showing the current state of the galaxy. Green areas marked systems where human tactical advisors were already working with local forces. Red areas showed regions still under Korthak threat. Humanity is willing to share our knowledge and assistance. But we will do so as equals, not as junior members of an organization that initially rejected us. The tree-like delegate from Verdania spoke with his multiple voices. What are your specific terms, Captain Morrison? Morrison pulled up detailed proposals that had been prepared on Earth. First, human military doctrine will be integrated into galactic defense training programs. This means teaching your officers to think creatively, to break conventional rules when necessary, and to understand psychological warfare. This was a radical departure from traditional galactic military education. For thousands of years, alien forces had been trained to follow strict protocols and established procedures. The human approach of encouraging initiative and unconventional thinking was revolutionary. Second, Morrison continued, joint research programs will be established to develop new technologies that combine human creativity with alien engineering capabilities. Dr. Rodriguez appeared on the communications screen from Luna Base. We've already seen promising results from preliminary cooperation. The Shadow's Edge used human tactical concepts with modified alien technology. Imagine what we could accomplish with full cooperation. The Volthari delegate flickered with interest. What kind of technological cooperation are you proposing? Dr. Rodriguez smiled. Your crystal ships can phase through matter, but you use this ability defensively. Humans see offensive applications you've never considered. Our stealth technology could be enhanced with your phasing abilities to create ships that are truly undetectable. This was the kind of thinking that had given humans their advantage. While aliens used their technologies for their intended purposes, humans looked for creative applications and unexpected combinations. Third, Morrison said, returning to his terms, human colonies will be established in key strategic locations throughout the galaxy. These will serve as training centers and research facilities for developing new tactical approaches. Admiral Kexthara considered this carefully. You're asking for territory and influence throughout our space. We're offering to establish schools where your officers can learn to fight wars you thought were impossible to win, Morrison replied. The Korthak swarm was just the beginning. There will be other threats that conventional tactics cannot handle. Commander Alex Carter's voice joined the conversation from the Shadow's Edge, now docked at the space station. Admiral, in the 3 months since Centauri, human advisors have helped galactic forces win 12 major engagements against Korthak remnants. Before human involvement, you were losing every battle. The statistics were undeniable. Galactic forces that had been on the verge of collapse were now systematically destroying the remaining bioship fleets. The key was not better weapons or stronger ships, but better thinking. Lieutenant Ben Hayes provided additional tactical analysis. The Korthak adapt to conventional threats, but they still cannot process unconventional strategies. Human advisors have taught your commanders to fight unpredictably, and the results speak for themselves. The Nereidan ambassador raised one of his tentacles. What guarantees do we have that humanity will continue to share this knowledge? What prevents you from using these tactics against us? Morrison smiled. The same thing that prevented us from revealing our capabilities until absolutely necessary. Humans prefer cooperation to conquest. We'd rather have allies than subjects. Dr. Rodriguez added technical details to support this point. Our stealth technology could have been used for surprise attacks against any galactic world. Instead, we used it to observe and prepare for a threat to all civilizations. That should tell you something about human intentions. The hall buzzed with quiet conversations as delegates considered the proposals. These were terms unlike any presented in galactic history. Usually, new members asked for protection and trade rights. Humans were offering to fundamentally change how galactic military forces operated. Admiral Kexthara called for order. The Council will vote on these proposals. All in favor of accepting humanity's terms and establishing the proposed cooperation agreements? One by one, every hand, claw, tentacle, and appendage in the hall was raised. The vote was unanimous. The decision is made, Admiral Kexthara announced. Humanity is not only admitted to the Galactic Defense Alliance, but is hereby designated as senior military advisors with authority to implement tactical training programs throughout Allied space. Morrison nodded with satisfaction. Then we accept. Dr. Rodriguez will coordinate the technology sharing programs. Commander Carter will oversee tactical training. And Captain Hayes will establish the strategic planning centers. As the formal ceremonies concluded, Admiral Kexthara approached Morrison privately. Captain, I must ask. How long have you been planning this? Morrison considered the question carefully. In one sense, we started planning the moment you rejected our first application. But in another sense, humans have been preparing for this our entire history. I don't understand. Every war humans have ever fought taught us something about unconventional tactics. Every time we faced a superior enemy, we learned to win through intelligence rather than strength. The Korthak War wasn't something we prepared for specifically, it was something we were already prepared for through our nature. Admiral Kexthara realized the implications. You're saying that being weak made you strong. We're saying that being underestimated is an advantage if you know how to use it. The galaxy looked at humans and saw physical limitations, primitive technology, and chaotic military history. You missed the creativity, adaptability, and strategic thinking that those apparent weaknesses had created. 6 months later, the transformation of galactic military forces was evident everywhere. Training centers established on human colonies taught alien officers to think like guerrilla fighters. Research facilities developed new technologies that combined human innovation with alien engineering. Most importantly, the Korthak swarm had been completely eliminated. The bioships that had seemed unstoppable were now extinct, destroyed by enemies that fought with their minds instead of just their weapons. Commander Carter stood on the bridge of the new UES Independence, the first ship built through human-alien cooperation. It combined human stealth technology with Volturi phasing systems and Zephyrian armor design. The result was a vessel that no enemy could predict or counter.